our guest is Tim Mahoney.
We think that this is one of the biggest investigations, if not the biggest, into the story of the Exodus that's ever happened.
And pass it on. Share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today our guest is Tim Mahoney. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Tim has an incredible movie out called Patterns of Evidence, Exodus, and a wonderful book to go along with it that has a whole lot more details than the movie was able to include.
That's correct.
So why don't you tell us how this all started?
Well, we have a tagline that says, "You never know where a crisis of faith will lead you." And originally, I had no crisis of faith. One of the challenges that I was looking at was that I didn't know I was going to be faced with was that I went into Egypt when I had heard that there was people looking for the route of the Exodus, and which sea did they cross, what mountain did they go to, and I thought that was a great adventure. So I thought, well, let's start where the Israelites started. And I went to Egypt, to the land of Goshen, to a particular place, and I went to talk with an archaeologist there, and I thought he was uncovering the story of the Exodus. But when I got there, he basically told me no, that he didn't have any real evidence at the time that he was looking for the story of the Exodus. And I don't know if you've ever gotten the flu, but the flu kind of comes over you, and you don't really realize it until you're really sick. And by the time I got back from Egypt, home looking at this footage, I started to feel sick. Because I thought, my family had told me that these stories were true. Up until this time, I believed them, but now I've gone to the very location. Very few people have ever been to that location. And I went and talked to a man who would know, and he is telling me that he doesn't see any proof for it. And that started to affect me. That was the beginning of my introduction to this investigation. But I was able to, through the help of really in some providential ways, find other information from specifically from another Egyptologist who said, wait a minute, the whole story for the arrival of the early Israelites is there, but it's underneath. See, they were digging. There's a city of Ramesses, and underneath it is another city, and that city is called Avaris. And what they were saying is that this city of Ramesses that the Bible speaks about is the location of where they were, but not at the time. And so that's what we think was going on, is that underneath the city of Ramesses is a whole other city and a whole other story. And that's where this film and the book come and start to explore that. And so what we said was, science likes to look at things, and the scientific hypothesis is to look for a pattern and see if it repeats itself. So we said, well, what if we took the Bible for what it said, and we looked at that as a pattern? The arrival, the multiplication, and slavery of the Israelites. The judgment of Egypt, the exodus of these people out of Egypt, the Israelites, and then the conquest of the Promised Land. 6 major steps. And that's what this film and book investigate. Can we find evidence for that? And I guess the thing to tell your audience is the good news is we found amazing patterns of evidence that matched every step of this investigation. And that's why everyone has been so interested in it. We've gotten scholars who've gotten behind this. This is a big deal because right now, the universities are what we call the killing fields of Christian faith.
Yes.
Young people go off to the university, they go to their history class or their science or whatever, and the movement is today that they'll say, hey, this is a myth. The science doesn't prove it. But the truth of the matter is that you're not hearing the whole story, and that there's a whole other way to look at this, and that's what we're excited about. Patterns of Evidence is revealing that kind of breakthrough.
Yeah, I really liked the way you used the timeline in the film, and you also have it in the book.
Right.
Yeah.
The wall of time is an interesting device because I knew it had to be visual. And so we basically show where the storyline, if you can see things, I had to do it. See, I have to make things so I understand them. And so if I can see things visually. And so we created this wall of time. It's in a beautiful desert valley, and we visit it very often. And we lay out, so when someone says something like, in the New Kingdom of Egypt, It's simple. We basically show you on this wall of time, on one of the walls, where the Middle Kingdom is, where the New Kingdom is, where the Bible story is supposed to have happened, where Jericho fell. And once you start to see that, it becomes very easy for you to understand the story. Children now are watching this film and loving it. And I might say that we are coming out with a children's version.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, we're in the middle of filming that. We're filming it this summer. So it's important that your children see this film too, because what they need to know is that there is a pattern of evidence. There's a historical basis for these stories. And I haven't gone to as far as saying, okay, I'm going to declare this. I'm going to just show you what the pattern is. You connect the dots. But there are so many connections that it is so powerful that I think that it really does match. And I always use the word match the story of the Bible. And many people say, well, that's then evidence. But as a filmmaker that's investigating this, my job, I think, is to just collate and putting all this information together. It took us 12 years of investigating.
Wow, that must have cost a fortune.
Yes, it did.
I mean, I was watching the film and I was thinking, with all the on-location things that you did and all the filmography and special effects and everything, I thought this had to be a huge project.
We think that this is one of the biggest investigations, if not the biggest, into the story of the Exodus that's ever happened. It has a broad, I mean, even in this book here, this book has interviews with Benjamin Netanyahu, Shimon Peres, Natan Sharansky, Jackie Mason, Vincent Bugliosi, who just recently passed away. He wrote the book Helter Skelter. He wrote a book called Divinity of Doubt. So I have all these interviews. This is almost 400 pages of graphics and illustrations that couldn't get into the movie. And it's all being released into the mainstream, so you can buy where DVDs are sold and digital downloads. You can get it. The book will be in bookstores. And if it's not, ask for it. And we also have a website where we can direct you to where to purchase it, which is patternsofevidence.com. Patternsofevidence.com.
What are you going to be doing after this?
Well, what's interesting is that if you see the word patterns of evidence, and you see Exodus here in red, we're working on the next part of the story. Which way did they go? In other words, this film covers evidence in Egypt and the conquest, parts of that. Then we're going to go to when they left Egypt, what sea did they cross, what mountain did they go to, and what routes might they have taken, and then what happened at the mountain that changed the world. Because it says that the Jewish people made a covenant with God. And is that true? Can we find evidence of that? And what about these commandments that were given, the 10 Commandments that are the foundation of Western civilization? So we're going to look at that big idea. And that's the next part of the investigation. And right now the working title is Patterns of Evidence Moses, is what we're looking at.
Oh, that sounds great. I can't wait. Is that going to take 12 years?
No, it's going to be very quick. Hopefully I'm not proved wrong by that statement, but the plan is that we know what the style and the format is, and we've already filmed a lot of the material. So our plan is as we're able to raise funding, we will move towards the next film.
What has been your biggest takeaway? What have you personally learned from the journey?
That's a good question. As I'm trying to think about it, my biggest takeaway is I do believe that, I never thought, by the way, that I would ever write a book or that I would ever make a movie to this level. And I think that there are many people that today are distracted, and they actually have something they're supposed to be doing. And if I were to encourage your audience, it's that don't be distracted. I had to make a decision. I have not watched much television for a number of years. I just didn't have the time for it. I couldn't sit and while away my time watching programs and just at night or whatever. So I had to work. I had to write, and I had to do things. And so I remember going down there and writing chapters from this book and telling the stories of this whole piece. And I didn't start here, but I started somewhere else when it was like, maybe I should go to Egypt and just investigate this. That was one idea. And I find that little ideas then build upon themselves, you see. And so the film eventually grew. And I would never have signed up for this. So what I would tell people, your audience, is that there might be things you're supposed to be doing, and you need to pay attention to that, and you need to get rid of distractions. And so my takeaway is if that's the case, then you might do something that's way beyond you and that you're supposed to be doing. And I believe that that's the one thing that I would take away, is that if you can do that, you might be surprised of that outcome, and that you could do things beyond anything you had imagined, and that you're actually supposed to be doing. That's what you were put here for,
right?
And that's what I believe I've learned.
Wonderful. You've told us that they can find you at
PatternsofEvidence.com.
PatternsofEvidence.com.
And then we can tell them where to purchase it. Depending on where people like to buy it, there's different ways. It'll be video streamed, and they can get digital downloads on their favorite sources. So.
Okay. Well, I encourage everybody to get these, because it's wonderful, and it's great to see how God is making available the evidence that His Word is true. I mean, we believed it, but now we're seeing proof through archaeology, so that's really exciting.
I think it is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
It's very encouraging. It helps people to be bolder, and I actually think the thing that for children is that it helps them to visualize. I've had young children say, "Now I can see it. I believed in it, but now I see it." And that's what this film does. Is it's brought it to be a visual story, and they're able to take that in.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this for the body of Christ and for the world.
Well,
we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Share